Check, check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go! Well, Happy New Year to each and every one of you. Thanks for making me part of your viewing or listening pleasure. I do appreciate it. 2024 in the rearview mirror, and we're looking through the windshield here in 2025. I want to thank my friends and my family, first of all, and then my sponsors who helped me kind of get back on my feet. 2024 was shocking and disappointing in some ways. Well, in a lot of ways, professionally and personally. People who you thought were your friends weren't really your friends. I learned a couple of good, valuable business lessons along the way, and found out what a lot of athletes have told me over the years. The game is fun. The business, not so fun. And in the world of football, it is a great business, or a great sport, sorry. Fun. It's the best team sport in the world, I believe. All 12 men in the CFL, in Canadian football, 11 men south of the border, all got to be working together. You put your religion, you put your political beliefs, you put everything aside, sex, gender, pronouns, all that stuff aside, to fight together for a common cause on game day. We're in the same jersey. And I think if we could take, I've said this many times, if we could take what's behind the dressing room doors and bring it out into life, our world at large would be so much better. But on the other side, you find out that it's a very petty, inferior, insecure world, I guess is what I'm trying to say. A lot of backstabbing, a lot of people who you think are your buddies aren't your buddies. And then when you find out who your true friends are, you grab onto that. So that's kind of what I learned in 2024. I also learned it's how you choose to look at it. And my guest today on Ballsy Uncut, the first edition of 2025, we kind of talk about it. It's something, sometimes things, you can look at it, things happen to you, which I did initially in 2024. And I'm not going to lie to you, I'm still bitter, and I'm still going to be bitter. And I know who is responsible for doing what they did to me. And I'll never forget that. And I don't know that I'll ever forgive. As a Christian, I probably should. Right now, I'm not prepared to do that. Not going to lie to you. That's just me being honest. But sometimes things happen to you. But if you take a step back and reflect and meditate and go through it, you can go with the mindset they happen for you. And I've landed in a business that I never thought I'd be in, the car business, as a product specialist at Crestview Chrysler, where I started a long, long time ago as a cart boy and stocking shelves at Canadian Tire, which then moved across the street to where it is now on North Albert, and Crestview Chrysler moved in at 601 Albert Street. And I've been surrounded by some really good people. The general manager, Matt Fisher, my sales managers, Rob Fensky, who's been a big help, and Jeff Klein, Craig Livingston, Trish Zimmer, and of course, Tanya St. Clair, and Ken Kennedy for, all their help. I thank them very much. And a bunch of other people too. And then been surrounded by some great colleagues on the floor. Steph Yost, who sold my very first van to me when my son Ethan was first born. I bought a Dodge Caravan off of Steph there at Crestview Chrysler. He's still there. Colin Weeb has helped me out. Brody, Caitlin. I got hired with Yahya Syed, 22-year-old kid who could be my son. His buddy Azaz, who's there. Azaz, a great kid too. We got so many good people working there at Crestview Chrysler. I'm excited to be there. And in a slow month, I sold 5 units with the help of my colleagues. And I'm still figuring things out. It takes a while to learn that business. But it's this is something I found out too. The car business, at least at Crestview Chrysler, owned by Capital, it's an honest living. You kind of in sales, you eat what you kill, meaning you eat if you sell something. But I just don't want to sell something, and neither do the great people at Crestview. We want to put you in your next vehicle. We want to help you buy the vehicle that you like and be there for you. And I found that it's an honest living. It really is. You got the whole misconception of car salespeople, and it's totally not what I thought it was either. So I welcome you to come on down early in the new year here. Until the end of January, you'll be in the running to win 2 tickets to the Riders home opener. They still haven't released the schedule yet, the CFL. And and a Joe jersey, which I purchased, and I'll try to get him to autograph it. I'm sure we'll be able to figure something out. But things have come full circle. Once again, happened to you, happened for you. If I was still broadcasting CFL games, maybe I wouldn't get it. And hey, I'd love to do that again. I thought I did a good job of it. And judging by the reaction of most people, not everybody, they thought I did a good job too. So I'd love to do that again. But my son, I talked about my son, and my daughter was a part of it too, as we had the minivan. My son has been invited to the CFL Combine here March in Regina. So we go full circle from long bombs on Singer Crescent, talking about life from light post to light post and walking around the neighborhood to being at the Combine. So I go from a minivan at Crestview Chrysler with my son Ethan, bought that because my then wife and I just didn't want to reach in the back seat for the car seat. So we buy a van from Steph Yost at Crestview Chrysler to now where I'm working at Crestview Chrysler, and he grew up around the football field going to all the games when I was working the sidelines and doing the pre and the post game show before he became the voice of the team, and now he has a chance to play in the CFL. So things have come full circle, and I'm looking forward to 2025. Hope you are too, and spread the word. This is the place for sports talk, all sports talk. As you can see over my shoulder, Hartford Whalers puck, even though I'm an Oilers fan. My son's old UND uniform. I don't have a Padres figurine, but I've got Bryce Harper from the Nationals over my shoulder. All the CFL stuff, the Jim Hobson book there. That was one of my highlights of 2024. Before Jim passed away, him and his significant other, Brenda, had me out at their place at the lake. We had a 3.5-hour lunch when Jim was still in good spirits. He, of course, would pass away. Riders need to get back to the Jim Hobson era. That's all I'll say. So, yes, we talk all sports here, but in particular, football talk. A guy who a lot of people have kind of poo-pooed as, I don't think he's that good. I have been critical of Jake Maier. I'm not going to duck that. But I've also been a big supporter, and I don't get the Jake Maier hate. Dude is 27. He'll be 28 when the season kicks off. Riders trade for him for an 8th-round pick. Trevor Harris, who's a friend of mine and had an all-star season in 11 games, and when he's playing, he's one of the best in the league when he's playing at a high level, and he did after he came back from his injury. Trevor Harris can get it done if they can keep him upright and he can stay healthy. Problem is, Trevor Harris is 39, not his fault, it's father time, and he hasn't dressed for 18 games in 10 years. So when Trevor goes down, maybe he won't, but chances are if you were betting money, he will. 2, 3, 4 games, you got to have a guy that can step in. And I wasn't around the team nearly as much as I was the last 2 years, last 20 years actually, obviously for obvious reasons. Part of it was my accreditation was denied at the field. I wasn't allowed to go to the field. So as a reporter, go figure, because you're not traditional media. But anyway, maybe they'll change their mind this year because this has become a very big platform. In fact, this is, judging by the Facebook numbers I've gotten and the X numbers and Instagram, this is the most watched, listened to presentation of football and sports talk in Saskatchewan, right here, Ballsy Uncut, and we're just over 6 months in. Got the numbers to prove that things are picking up big time, and sponsors are lining up, so I'm happy about that. Appreciate that. But anyway, I wasn't around the team as much, so I can't comment exactly what Shea Patterson did or didn't bring to the table. He did fairly decently, I thought, but I don't know that he's the next guy, and he's older than Jake Maier. Jake Maier took over from a legend, played on a not a very good team a couple years ago, got them to the playoffs, and the Riders soiled the sheets. And last year had a better year than the year before, was in the top half of the quarterbacking in this league stats-wise, but he played on a crappy Stampeders team. Now, yes, he had a hand in that, but I think it's a great move by Jeremy O'Day to bring him in here. And as you're going to hear in this interview I did with Jake Maier on New Year's Eve, he is excited to prove himself all over again. And in truth, I didn't go down the road too much about the Riders because he doesn't want to talk about it too much, because technically, yes, he is a Rider, but he is going to head towards free agency unless they sign him before. And I would suspect the Riders traded a late round pick so they could have the opportunity to negotiate with him before free agency. We've seen this with Bo Levi Mitchell and others. I suspect Jake Maier will sign with this team A, because I think he's buddies with Mark Mueller. B, because he likes Regina and Saskatchewan. He's had great success here. And 3, Jake Maier is a guy that is out of options, kind of. Like the musical chairs of the quarterbacks have kind of gone around. So I don't know. I think he's going to have to go on a. Hopefully the Riders can sign him to like a longer term deal with the prove it incentive laden at the start. Because let's be honest, unless he just whips the pants off of Trevor Harris in training camp, I think Jake Maier is going to be the backup to Trevor Harris, 1A and 1B. But right away, off the top of my head, who's got a better quarterbacking combo than Trevor Harris and Jake Maier in the CFL? I don't think anybody has a better combination. You could make cases, but off the top of my head, there's no better 1-2 punch in the CFL at quarterback now than Jake Maier and Trevor Harris if they get Maier signed, and I believe they will. And I believe that's kind of been part of the plan all along. Hey, Trevor, we're going to give you a fair deal, but incentive-laden because we got to kind of look to the future. And I had said this a while ago, and it didn't even sit well with Trevor Harris, I'm told, at the start. But I just call it like I see it. It's Ballsy Uncut. So bottom line, they have to start looking to the future. Trevor is 39, not 29. And yes, people like Trevor Harris can say, I have the best football in front of me. And he's not lying. Maybe he does. Maybe he does. But Father Time doesn't lie and has never been beaten. And he's not getting any younger. So the Riders have to look to the future eventually. Is that this year in training camp? Is it next year? I don't know, but they've got a great 1A and 1B and 2 super dudes in Trevor Harris and Jake Maier. 2 quarterbacks the Riders should be confident in, especially Trevor Harris because he proved it last year. Anyway, Jake Maier joins us next on the show. First conversation he has had with anybody as quarterback of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, a guy I consider a friend. All right, so I'll say Happy New Year to you, Jake Maier. Nice to talk to you in person for changes. How are you doing, bud?
Yeah, doing great. Happy New Year.
Yeah.
All's good.
Yeah.
Definitely eventful, but all's good.
Yeah. So are you like a New Year's guy where like the calendar flips and your mind, you reset everything, or is it just another day for you?
Well, it's definitely the day before New Year's definitely is another day. It's actually my wife's birthday on New Year's Eve. So,
Oh, nice.
yeah, we have a lot of fun as a family, do stuff as a family, obviously, but it's in terms of like, the new year, new me stuff, not really.
Mhm.
But it is a good like a start point in terms of like, hey, now it's really time to get ready to go for that next year, that next calendar year, that next season. So there's a little bit of that, but nothing too dramatic. But yeah, the new year feeling, especially in sports, it does feel good. It's kind of refreshing, I would say. That's one
Mhm.
thing I've learned over the years is once that calendar flips, you do get to restart a little bit. So yeah, there's definitely a little bit of that, but nothing crazy.
So you will be restarting, and in fairness, as we start this interview, Jake doesn't want to talk too much about his situation because obviously got traded to the Rough Riders, but a contract isn't done yet. They basically traded for your rights so they could negotiate with you. So I get that, and we'll be respectful of that. But given what's happened, Calgary to now Saskatchewan or wherever it might be, maybe the new year does take on a bit of a better meaning for you, or a different meaning.
And yeah, I mean you're not wrong. I mean it is a bit a reset for my career. Those 4 years in Calgary obviously didn't end the way that we envisioned it or that I envisioned it, especially. But to be able to restart and get an opportunity to take everything I've learned over the last 4 years and make it better, reinvent it, and make it better than what it was is something I really look forward to. I mean, it's, even when the trade went down and when everything kind of changed, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't this feeling of like, kind of rejuvenation and
Hmm.
and like I said, just the ability to just kind of restart. And I think the nice thing for me is I've seen a lot of really good times, really tough times in this profession, in this business, and I'm still 27 going on 28 years old. So the life that I've lived in the CFL has been a lot. It's been eventful. There's been a lot that's happened. But I'm still able to say like, hey, I'm still in my prime as a player. I'm still someone that's continuing to get better and better in this league as my age goes on. So that's the bittersweet part of it. But I am excited for it because I know how much football I have ahead of me, and I know this is, when I look back, it's probably going to be one of those, that beginning portion of my career, and I'm excited for that.
Yeah, and you're still young. We'll talk about that in a second. It's funny. One of my favorite quarterbacks of all time is Phillip Rivers, not only for what he did on the field, but off the field with the Chargers and then the Colts. His saying he lives by is "Nunc Cepi." It's
Okay.
Latin. It's Latin for "now I begin." So whether you go out and you throw a touchdown, you got to start over again the next series, or whether you throw an interception, you got to shelf it and start over the next series. Now I begin.
Yeah.
I would say that's a pretty good mindset for a quarterback. Do you without buying into that phrase, but do you buy into that mentality, Jake?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, there's all different types of analogies and things that refer to for quarterbacks having a short memory of a goldfish. That quote that you gave in terms of now I begin. I think there's so much truth to it, and really ultimately just trying to get yourself to a place where you're just focusing on being the quarterback. Because there's so much outside noise, so many outside opinions, so many things that are out of your control for the most part. And I think for me, the more I'm around the game, and the more I'm, just kind of in these situations, I just kind of try to think to myself, how can I get myself to just focusing on being the quarterback? And what that means is there's so many things that come with that. How good of a leader can I be every single day? How well can I prepare? How well, and how efficient can I be on game day, making sure I'm putting my team in the right situations to win. So it's just the idea of, hey, like, let's just simplify your life. Just be the quarterback. And the more I can focus on that, the less time you give yourself to worry about too much of the other nonsense that's out there in our game. So
Yeah.
I think that's a great point. I think that's a great quote. I didn't know that about him. I like Phillip Rivers too, man. I just feel like he always tried to play the game the right way and did it his way. And
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. I like that.
Well, you know what I like about it is like, I think he's a Hall of Famer, and he didn't win a championship. And a lot of people say you have to win a championship, you have to be successful to be a champion. But here's the thing about quarterbacking and coaching. It's interesting. I think head coaches and quarterbacks in the sport of football get too much of the praise, and they get too much of the blame. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they teach you that when you're at a young age, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you play in those youth leagues, and, you always hear those parents in the stands or people in the stands yelling at the quarterback for not making the right decision. And that's at 10 years old. And then, yeah, you get to your mid 20s and you're playing in a professional league, and it's the same boat as you're in the same boat. So, that's just the dynamic. I mean, that's never going to change. I don't, it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, is that culture in football, doesn't matter, man. It's gonna continue to ride that way and be that type of culture.
The reason why I bring it up, Jake, is this, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you. One thing is, I call it like I see it, and I've been,
Okay.
my buddy's Trevor Harris, but I've been critical of him just with my job. I've been critical of some of your play at times, but I've been a defender of yours. And the one thing I can't understand is you had a better year this year than you did last year. Dunnigan and I talked about it on this podcast, and he said, if you look at Jake's stats, they're better like last year than they were 2 years ago when he took over from Bo Levi. Yet people, they just don't see that. Does that frustrate you? Do you block out the noise? Do you see that noise? Like, what do you think of that?
I would just say that I believe, and I've said this to people privately, and I'll say this to you now. I do believe that this last season, from a mind, body, leadership, physical on-field performance. I felt like last year all around was the best year of my career.
Hmm.
Now it's hard to say that without, getting the eye rolls and the, kind of looked at like you're kind of nuts for thinking that way about yourself or having that perspective. But I really do believe last year was probably my best year, all things considered,
Hmm.
just on a personal level. Now, obviously, going 5-11-1, and then the year before that 6-12. That doesn't help your case in terms of how you kind of view yourself and where you think your progression is as a player versus what outside perspectives might be. So, yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, I'm very critical of myself too, man. I haven't necessarily been completely proud at all of the last 2 years of football that I've played.
Hmm.
However, I do want to give myself a little bit of grace and be able to believe the fact that last year was a very improved year for me. I felt like I really learned a lot going into that first year as the full-time starter, and unfortunately, we just didn't win enough football games, man. And there was obviously decisions that I made in games that played a role in winning and losing.
Hmm.
And so be it. I mean, that's just what you sign up for. That's who you are as a player. That's the role of being the quarterback. So, I mean, I appreciate the support from some of the outside world. I don't really spend too much time caring about the negativity from the outside world. So I would say, yeah, the noise is definitely being blocked out. But at the same time, I have my own perspective of how I feel I've progressed as a player over the last couple of years, and I'm going to stand on that. And I'm going to any organization I go to, that's going to be my message to them is just say, hey, I feel like I'm in my prime, and I feel like I'm trending in the right direction. I can't wait to help you.
Well, you're 27, you have experience, and you had a better year, so it's a no-brainer for my standpoint. But I don't exactly have the GM title on my resume. What do you want though? What do you want? Whether it's the Rough Riders because they've got your rights right now, or anybody else, what do you want from the next opportunity? Like, what's the key? What are you looking for?
I mean, I'm looking for an opportunity to be around people in an organization that I trust. Um, and that's not to say I didn't have that in Calgary, but I just think that the more you're around this business and you see the ebbs and flows of it, and you understand how year to year it is, it's just super important to pick the right people. The people that you're going to be able to go to battle with and say, hey, when we succeed and have a lot of success together and things are going well, that's a healthy environment. And then vice versa, man. When you go through, a bit of a struggle during a season, kind of that valley of a season, and every CFL team has it, whether it's at the beginning, the middle, or the end. Are you guys going to be able to stick together and be those rocks of support for one another? I think that's really important. I feel like being with a group that will kind of value what I bring to the table in terms of what fit does it bring system wise for me. I think that's super important. And then honestly, it's I'm obviously going to be very picky on what an organization could provide me and my family and things of that nature. But I think leaving Calgary and going somewhere else, I think it's more on me to be able to start over and prove to an organization what I can bring to them. So I know like the conversation a lot of times when you're free agency is what can you do for me? What can you do for me? Well,
Mm.
I'm just looking forward for the opportunity to showing wherever I go, here's what I can bring to you. I look forward to earning the trust of management, the coaching staff, the new teammates that I come across. They should and they deserve to get a better version of me than what they've had the last 4 years. So I'm excited more so of what I can bring to them and the value I can bring to their organization, no matter the role right now, because I understand the dynamic of a 9-team league and I understand,
Hmm.
guys get their chance and it's weird. It's weird. It's a strange league, but you get used to it. So whether I'm playing all the time or not playing all the time or, whatever that role is, I want to pour everything and just say, hey, this is what I'm bringing to you guys. And I'm going to take a lot of pride in that every single day. So that's probably more so where my mind's at right now.
I'm the president slash GM sitting in a room with you. Why are you the face of my team? Why is Jake Maier going to be the face of my team for 5 years? Why should I? Why should I buy into Jake Maier?
Yeah, I mean, you should buy into me because I have a ton of experience in this league. I understand what it takes to win in this league. I am all in. I mean, you're talking and you're looking at someone that every single day they think about this game. They think about what's in the best interest of their teammates. They prepare their tail off to make sure that they're the best possible player to be able to produce in high stressful environments. And regardless of win, lose, or draw, you're going to get a guy that represents your organization to his fullest, and somebody that's just going to be all in, mind, body, spirit. So I've like I said, I've seen a lot over the last 4 years, a lot of good, a lot of not so good. But when you are dealing with someone like me, you're going to get someone that's super professional and committed to doing everything he can with what God has given him. And I really do believe that spiritually. I do believe, just trying to highlight every possible strength that I've been given, in this game. And that's always going to be my focus. And I'm going to work my tail off to make sure we win as many games as possible.
One thing I noticed about your game from afar last year as opposed to 2 years ago is you were a little like people talk about mobility and moving around. Well, your old coach, Dave Dickinson, he wasn't a scrambler, but he had great pocket presence and he could move around enough not to get into trouble. I noticed about you, you were a little more a fleet of foot, so to speak. I wouldn't say you're Lamar Jackson, but you could run on roll out of the pocket. I really like how you throw the ball on the run. Was that one of the things you thought you kind of worked on going into last season?
It was, man. And there's personal things that kind of changed in my life in terms of my diet that were a little bit kind of a detriment to me in my medical side. I mean, there were certain things that I legitimately wasn't able to digest anymore. I wasn't able to eat. And, my family has a history of celiac disease and not to get too deep down the rabbit hole when it came to that stuff, but I had to make some major changes from year 3 to year 4. And it's funny because I look back at some of those old photos of me in games maybe a couple years ago, and it's almost hard to recognize. And it's almost like, wow, man, I can't believe that it got to that point. But I really do believe it was because of, some of the things that I was kind of struggling with in my personal life with just with different stuff that was going on with my personal diet. And when I was able to pivot off that and make some real changes, and I give a ton of credit to my wife because she's dedicated so much to make sure that, I'm able to keep myself healthy and eat the right things and make sure it's not, hurting me rather than, helping me. And once that changed, I found myself with just, way more energy and way better focus, and it allowed me to put more into my training. And I tell people every year I run more and more every off season. And it's not like, it's not one of those things that's necessarily calculated, but it's like I run and I feel really good. And then you see the product on game where I'm able to step out of things a little bit better or make some more throws on the run for my team. And the more that happens, the more encouraging it becomes. And then naturally I find myself running more and more and more. So that's never going to change. I have plans to improve even more this off season. So yeah, definitely that was a big jump. And that was like our conversation we just had where it was like, it felt like you had a better year. And that's an area where I feel like there was some serious improvement. So that'll only continue to go.
Stats can lie, eyes don't. That's what I say. So I see what I see, and I believe it. Now, listen, Mark Mueller is here. And it's funny, Trevor Harris, we were talking on the bus the year before, and I said, listen, if Mueller comes here, you're going to love Mark Mueller, because he didn't really know Mark Mueller. I was one of the first texts he sent when he said, you're right, Mark Mueller is the guy. You know about Mark Mueller. So from that aspect, how attractive, like, I guess how I'll word it is this. Jake, what do you think of Mark Mueller?
He's just, I want to be able to say he's like a CFL brother to me, like you feel like you have some, family-like people in this league that you can relate to and that you've really bonded with over the years. And I would consider him that. And after my career, I would probably even say I'd remove the CFL part of it and just say, hey, he's like, he's like family to me. And because he's the baby years of my career, coming in and trying to figure out this game. And he's a great teacher of the CFL game for Americans that come up and are trying to learn it and trying to process it. And then he's just a great support and great coach with everything in between. He's able to challenge you and coach you hard, but also I think he does a really good job of collaborating, and that's hard to do at not just like this level, but just any level, to be able to put that much, faith and trust in your players to where he really is committed to making this a collaboration between two minds, player and coach, which is not easy, man. So I commend him for that. And that's something I've always appreciated about him. So, I love Coach Mueller. Amanda loves Coach Mueller. Like, it just, it was a really good experience for me in my first again, baby years of my career. And he helped accelerate my growth quick to be able to get on the field as soon as possible, which I know after thinking about it, like at the time, I'm like, okay, yeah, I can play. Like, why not? Like, let's do it. And then you look at like just the history of the league of guys playing really early in their career, or even you see guys come into the league and attempt to play really soon and really quick, and you realize like, oh man, that's actually kind of a challenge. And then, and at the time, I knew it was a challenge, but he made it so much simpler for me that it made the challenge maybe a little bit easier for me at the time. So that's I give him a ton of credit for that.
One of the underlying themes of this chat, we're having our first time ever talking like this, and I really appreciate you taking time, and I'll let you go right away on your wife's birthday. Tell her I apologize for
No, you're good.
taking you hostage for a few minutes. We guys put helmets on and we forget that they're human beings. Okay. And I got a kid going through this now who's hoping to break into the league next year. So I have a different perspective than just say a reporter. You take over for Bo Levi Mitchell, who's a legend, and no discounting Bo Levi Mitchell. Guy's a stud, won so many games as the Stampeders quarterback, but he also had a team that was positioned better than the one you took over. So if you take that, and listen, I'm not trying to say you're not trying to, you didn't have a hand in some of the lousy records the last 2 years. You acknowledge that. But what I'm getting at here is, you take over from a legend, and you take over a team that wasn't as good as maybe the one the legend played for. And then you look at it and you're like, how tough is that for Jake Maier to step into big shoes? Those are big, even if you had a comparable team. Those are huge shoes. Just talk about that from that perspective, man.
I mean, they were big shoes. Don't get me wrong, but I think when you asked that question earlier, kind of playing the role of, hey, I'm a CFL GM. Why should you be my guy? Why should I put all this faith in you? And I think the reason why I bring that up again is because my answer is they're big shoes. But I always felt like, and I always feel like as a player, I can create those big shoes too. Like I always felt like, hey, I belong. And as much as, and Bo would say this too, like as much as we had so much respect for each other and I looked up to him at the time being a young rookie, second year player, he knew and I knew that I had the confidence to be able to say like, yeah, we belong in the same field together, and I think that's one thing that he respected about me was he knew I wasn't intimidated or shy from being on the biggest stage or playing in the biggest moments or trying to be a part of the biggest games. I've never felt overwhelmed by that really ever. Now, have I necessarily played exactly how I've wanted to play in some of those types of games over the course of my career? Of course not. Have I had really good moments where I felt like I met the standard? Absolutely. So I think I've been on both sides of it, and yeah, there wasn't really much sleep being lost for me, and it was cool to hear just the tradition. And I got that question all the time. Like, you're playing quarterback for an organization that saw Jeff Garcia and Doug Flutie and Dave Dickinson and Bo Levi Mitchell. And my answer to them was always, yeah, okay. I love and respect all those guys. Those guys are amazing. My goal now is to add my name to that list. And hopefully one day you'll be able to say Jake Maier as kind of the fifth or sixth guy that was able to be the quarterback here. So I've never really flinched at that stuff. And I understand, now going to another organization and being traded to an organization like the Riders, I know the standard that comes with that too. I'm no fool. I see the passion and I just see the standard that the organization, the fan base, and all the ex-players live by. So that's not going to be anything that's going to cause any over stress in my life. I feel like I belong, and I want to be able to prove that.
Okay, so two more questions, and you just led me right. It's like I'm one of your receivers. It's a hot route, and I picked up the blitz just like you. Okay, so we talked about Mueller. When you walk into the stadium, you walk past a statue of his grandpa, Ron Lancaster. And I've asked other guys this, Solomon Elamimian, G. Roy Simon, like when they're on the opposing sidelines, not at that moment, but maybe after the season, have they ever thought, wow, that's quite an atmosphere. I wonder what it would be like to run out of that tunnel and be a part of that organization. So once again, not in a game because you're focused, but now that you're kind of a rough rider, but you're not yet.
Hmm.
Have you thought about what that would be like to run out of the tunnel, be the quarterback of Canada's team, as I
Of,
like to
of,
say?
of course I've thought about it. Yeah, I'm not gonna. There's no lying about this. I mean, I actually remember hearing about Trevor Harris talk about, I remember when he initially signed one of his quotes, or it was somewhere in this ballpark, but it was like, I always had these thoughts about being the quarterback for this organization and this team, just because he understood the tradition and the passion that came with it. I've always referred to Saskatchewan as, and this could get me in trouble. It may or may not. I don't really care. I've always felt this, but I've always felt like, Saskatchewan, that arena, that environment is kind of the mecca of our league. And you hear about playing in Madison Square Garden for the NBA. That's the mecca. You hear guys say that all the time. Like,
Yeah.
I've always felt that about Saskatchewan. I mean, my first first road game in Saskatchewan was amazing, and that was during the pandemic where things were kind of uncertain, and it was still amazing then. I've personally have had a lot of success in Regina, which
Hmm.
is kind of a coincidence, possibly, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe not, but I've always felt like every time I took my trip there, I always felt pretty good about myself playing in there, and then obviously with the outcomes. So yeah, I've definitely thought about it. I love their pregame entrance. I love some of their third, fourth quarter traditions that they do where the fans get excited. So I've definitely thought about it, and that's my opinion. I just feel like it's kind of the mecca of our league in terms of environments and passion. So that'd be pretty cool.
Okay, so if people watching or listening to this, a natural follow-up question from Ballsy would be, where are things in the contract? But we're not doing that because he said he doesn't want to talk about it, and I totally respect that. So we'll
Yeah.
see what happens down the line. But I am going to ask you this. So is it a daughter or a son you had?
No, I got my daughter. Yeah, she's
Daughter.
14 months now. Yep.
And what's her name again?
Everly.
Everly. That's right. Awesome.
Mhm.
Okay. I heard her crying in the background. Did she have a good Christmas? You guys had a good Christmas?
Dude, this year was amazing. It was definitely, it was the first Christmas, obviously, where she kind of understood what was going on. Like, wow, we got all these presents, and we got mom and dad here, and we got our uncles and grandparents. So
Yeah.
it changed everything. I mean, Christmas has always been more of a religious, spiritual holiday for
Yep.
me and my family personally.
Yep. Me too.
But and that's not to say it's not that. It still is. I mean, it's still
Yep.
heavy into that. But now it was like, wow, this is like kind of our first kids' Christmas, where it's like it kind of does take you back. Like you
Yep.
remember walking out of the hallway, your mom's got
Yeah.
the recorder,
Yeah.
open up your first gifts. Like that was special, man. That was fun.
That's
See
awesome.
how
Okay.
excited she got.
So just to tie it up and put a bow on this interview, I was mentioning Philip Rivers, and he has way more kids than you. I think he's got 7 daughters and 3 boys.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's crazy. Yeah.
He also has an NFL. He also has an NFL wage or former NFL wage. So we get that right. I joke the
Hmm.
CFL stands for cash flow low in comparison.
Sure.
But here's the question I want to wrap up with. You go through it, what you went through the last couple of years as the starter. You have Everly, you and your wife Amanda,
Mhm.
right? Is that correct?
Amanda. Yep.
Yeah. So you have your how much does that change your perspective on things? Like football's football and this is life. Rivers says he comes home, he's throwing 4 interceptions, the fans are booing, he's listening to the radio on the way home, and when he gets into the driveway, he's tripping over his scooter, there's a
Yeah.
basketball, and his
Yeah.
kids love him the same. It doesn't matter. He's not Philip Rivers, he's dad. I know your daughter's young, but just the mindset, the perspective, how much did that help you having a baby, having a family now, and football's here and life is here?
It definitely helps. I mean, yeah, I think I've done a decent job of separating the work and personal. And, when I'm at work, all I think about is ball, ball, ball. And when I'm at home, unfortunately, I'm not perfect at home. There are times where I do still think ball, ball, ball. But at the same time, I'm able to, put that off to the side and just be dad and just be able to spend as much time and just, I don't know, yeah, you come home from a day where maybe throw a couple interceptions in practice or something. You come home and you're trying to figure out if you can teach her to hit a ball off a tee, and it's just like, yeah, whatever. Like, wow,
Yeah.
tough day. Life must be tough. You threw a couple interceptions at practice
Yeah.
as your
Yeah.
little one's hitting the ball off the tee for the first time. So it's like that. That has allowed me to put more smiles on my faces, or more of a smile on my face. When I come home from a tough day of practice or a tough game, for sure. And then I think it just changes how you kind of approach like life, like just plan out your life in the future, where it's like, 5 years ago I would have said, yeah, I'm playing, I'm going to try to play till I'm 40, 42 years old and just whatever, just chase my own personal dreams and goals, and no one's going to get in the way of that. And you have your first kid, and it's like, okay, that's still a goal of mine. However, if push comes to shove, I know whose life I'm picking over me. And I know whose future is more important than mine. So that's been definitely an adjustment, but I like it. I like that feeling of just being like, hey, this life is not just about me anymore. It's not, and in some ways, it's less about me and more about them. So that's been fun to feel
Well,
that.
this has been a great chat, man. I appreciate you. Listen, I kind of sidetracked you at home. Football over here, life over there. But I appreciate you giving up some time on your wife's birthday. Say happy birthday from me. And I don't know how this is going to shake down. If you're in Rider Nation, I think you got to hope this guy's part of it. Best of luck, and we'll see where it shakes down, man. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, brother. I've always appreciated you. Just want to finish with that. I've always appreciated you. I appreciate your support, and best of luck with everything you're doing, man.